When people said they wanted the return of the punt, I don't think they meant they wanted the return of the punt kicker. Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Kevin Zwicker from Fast Count coming at you, and I am joined by none other than my guy, Robin Lundberg. Robin, what's going on, man?
What's up, man? Has the collective internet wrestling community stopped crashing out yet?
I don't think so, and that's exactly what I want to dive into. As we all know, this has been the talk of the wrestling world ever since it went down last night. Pat McAfee returned in a line with Randy Orton, and just going through my timeline and just talking to the general consensus when it comes to wrestling fans, it's been majority negative, right? But as we've discussed privately in our text messages, you kind of have an opposite viewpoint of this, and I want you kind of to get into it.
Yes, well, number one, I do understand some of the negativity in the instant reaction. There's a few things to unpack. I think the first thing is people take any surprise angle and always make it into a must-be huge, massive reveal. Like whenever they're the crate, it can't be Danhausen. It's gotta be, Andre the Giant back from the dead in order, or whatever the case may be. Like with the Masked Man, same thing. And so I don't know, like when the company itself crosses the line into overselling versus just telling TV that's compelling and gets you guessing, and just because it wasn't Vince McMahon, because you speculated it was going to be Vince McMahon, doesn't mean it's a disappointment necessarily. So that's a bigger picture thing. Then there's the actual reveal of Pat McAfee, and I can understand why that would irk some folks, especially given the one line that Randy Orton said about wrestling having more than one royal family. I feel like there felt as if, from a storyline standpoint, there were more sensible options to be talking to Randy Orton. Even when Stephanie McMahon came out on Monday, obviously that's a McMahon, and then there's Legacy and Flair and DiBiase and anybody that would follow that lineage. So I get that. Like, this doesn't even make sense. Then I get also the idea of it being very TKO, corporate overlord. Oh, we want a celebrity. They've been doing that trash with Jelly Roll, recently. Now you're doing it with Pat McAfee. And it's like, is this really creative, or is this an edict from above? Which they played into on TV, because Cody Rhodes said, anybody who represents you, or who represents you, which is Pat McAfee's agent, is Ari Emanuel. So I don't know if that was like a shoot or a work shoot or what have you. So there I get the complaint. I thought the execution was good. That's what I like. I thought Pat McAfee's promo was great. I really enjoyed it. It was very meta, right? Like, it's complaining about, it's what the people have been complaining about, while also sort of mocking them and making fun of them at the same time. Because he did the little bit about, I don't want to see 5'5" guys in Iron Man matches, which I'm not sure WWE really does. So to me, that felt like, to the AEW sickos a little bit. And then he's talked about ticket sales, and it's the business is just not what it once was, and it's not the Attitude Era, and feeding into this idea that the creative has sucked as of late too. So I thought his promo was strong, and I thought the execution worked, and I like the fact that they were playing into all those narratives. And then there's just that Pat is a talented performer. So you're putting a talent, regardless of everything else, the guy can cut a promo. The guy's physically good enough to get involved in that way. So if he is utilized the right way, and they're actually committed to it, like he was Randy Orton's manager or something, I could see it actually working. So I would say it's more of a mixed bag, in the sense of I get the initial reaction. I get scratching your head like, how does this make sense? But as a piece of television, I liked it, and I thought the promo was good.
So there's a lot to unpack there, and there's multiple ways that I kind of want to view it. But let's just stick to what we saw in the ring, right? The actual promo. We've seen throughout the years in many different interviews when it comes to the higher ups and all the different dirt sheets and stuff, where they talk about how they really value the casual viewer, right? That's something that we all know going into this, that especially during WrestleMania season, they're trying to do their best to catch the attention of the casual viewers, because guys like me and you were diehards. They know that they got us no matter what, right?
Yeah.
And when you have a promo going down in the middle of the ring, where you have Pat McAfee discussing, how WrestleMania hasn't sold out yet, and how the product isn't as good as the Attitude Era, and all these different things kind of putting down the current state of the product. If you're a person who's a casual and you're scrolling the channels and you see Pat McAfee and you notice who he is from ESPN and things like that, and you see him talking about how good the product used to be and how it sucks now, me as a casual viewer, I'd probably be thinking that, okay, if you're telling me it sucks now, then why am I going to watch this? So I find that to be counterproductive. And also from a storyline perspective, and I think we both can agree on this, it makes not a lot of logical sense, because the guy was saying, in the lead up to this, like, I'm only listening to the voice in my head, and the only other voice that, basically, kind of paraphrasing, basically has my attention is this one other voice. And it's not his wife, it's not his kids, it's not Triple H, Ric Flair, Batista, The Rock, anybody who would make logical sense. And I know that guys like Batista and The Rock aren't, realistic gets at this point with their, busy schedules. But why would it make any sense whatsoever that it's Pat McAfee? Out of all the people that would make logical sense, it'd be Pat. That's my issue.
Yeah, no. I mean, that part I get. But then the idea of Pat McAfee as Randy Orton's manager, I'm not mad at. Like, if he actually does it and does it well. And those shirts, by the way, are hard. Those are some of the hardest shirts they put out in a minute. I kind of want one of them. And Randy Orton, I feel like has gotten into a nice little groove. But he's also one of those dudes who's number one, skill. He can do it, but he's not a promo master or anything like that. So if you think of Pat McAfee a la his Paul Heyman, that's the way I would lean. And I think Pat McAfee is good enough to do that, right? Like, so that's where it didn't make the most sense. Though they didn't do that much in the sub. If he didn't mention a family line, I have to go back and look. If he didn't mention that, there would be no other real tie-in to the phone. It was just a random bit that they did in TV that the internet, and then Busted Open, I was on the other day. We took 1 million calls on it. Fans start drumming up and making it as if they, took out an ad in Times Square and said, this is the biggest moment in WWE history. Tune into SmackDown. It was basically Randy Orton was on the phone in a random segment. Then he was on the phone a couple other times. And then they said they're going to tell you who he was on the phone with on SmackDown. So I don't think they, sold it to it's not as bad as what happened with The Rock and Travis Scott, where you turned John Cena heel based on that and then never followed it up. Like, to me, this was like, okay, I can get over the little blip in logic if the product is good as a result. And I did like Pat McAfee's promo. So that's where the positivity comes in.
It feels kind of strange to me now because, after the segment went down and what we saw on SmackDown, people have already started fantasy booking, things going out. And now, just for me personally, it feels as if, WrestleMania is basically WWE Super Bowl, right? That's they don't have an off season, but that's kind of their big, coronation. I just screwed that word up. Coronation moment of their calendar. And it feels like now that feels like kind of like a speed bump. And the real destination that we're kind of heading towards is Cody Rhodes and Jelly Roll versus Pat McAfee and Randy Orton, which for me, it's like, okay, we're all leading up to WrestleMania, but it now feels like, WrestleMania is just a pit stop to get to that.
The backlash.
In my mind.
Yeah. That would be a backlash match, I'm imagining. Oh, yeah. I don't know. Yeah, I'm not in the more Jelly Roll camp. But he did RKO Jelly Roll, right? So that part of it, I'm not I'm not in love with it. I'll see where it goes. It depends, because it is, there is that legitimate concern. There's a legitimate concern of the watering down of the product, or whatever you want to call it, that happens. I think you texted me and I said that's how corporations work. If somebody did from above who had no idea did say you need to do this, that's how these things work all the time in all sorts of big corporations. ESPN, for instance, right? Where somebody who's not intimately involved in the day-to-day is all of a sudden, would be good? And you can't really say no to them, right? Because of who they are. So that doesn't surprise me if it happens. And I think it clearly happened with the Rock at Elimination Chamber and everything that ensued at that point. The difference is The Rock is a friggin' legend and had just come off of an amazing run as the final boss. So if it's to just get more interaction with Jelly Roll and more of that shit, yeah, it's not going to work. If it legitimately like turns Pat McAfee into this sort of character who, you know, helps bring Randy Orton to the another level at this phase of his career, I could see it working, but I'll to be determined.
Robin, let the people know where they can find you.
Yeah, of course. All social media, obviously, Robin Lundberg, YouTube channel, Robin Lundberg over there as well.
And all those will be linked up in the description, guys. Please remember to hit that like button and subscribe. I am Kevin Zwicker. I'm out.